This is a personal story from which we can learn much about the dilemmas encountered when dealing with the elderly who are suffering from advanced dementia. I was not very popular when I halted the foreclosure for unpaid condominium maintenance fees of a destitute owner who had advanced dementia who was taken advantage of by a much younger alcoholic girlfriend until a court could appoint him a guardian to find him a place to stay and to sell his unit and pay off the fees in due course. His demented behavior had totally alienated him from many in our community, and they felt little pity towards his condition. Now, Alzheimer's disease is the main type of dementia, and there are other types also. And there's no need to name my community. This is an action that would have been taken by many over 55 communities who really do not know how to deal with owners who are suffering from advanced dementia. They think that their unacceptable demented behavior is their fault, and they feel no pity. Now, rather than blame my fellow officers, we must realize that this is a story we can all learn from. From our thumbnail, we learn that the elderly Charlton Heston suffered from dementia, as did and as do many other famous people. Please, we welcome interesting questions in the comments. Let us learn and reflect together. Most of this talk is from personal experience, but we will discuss available resources at the end of this video. Feel free to follow along in the PowerPoint script we uploaded to SlideShare. Recently, my fellow over 55 condominium officer sent me a threatening attorney letter and passed a vote of no confidence, both before the board of directors and the officers, attempting to compel me to resign from my position because about 6 months ago I stopped a foreclosure sale of an owner who had advanced dementia. He was destitute because his alcoholic younger girlfriend had stolen all his money. He had no family or friends, and his demented behavior had totally alienated many in our community. And I remember very vividly the meeting that was called to discuss a certain Robert who was seriously behind on his maintenance fees. Robert had been a problem for the community for years. He had been in collections for years. The attorney would call his condominium and would arrange a payment plan, and a few payments were made, and then the payments would stop. This happened over and over and over again. In addition, there were many complaints. The neighbors complained, and the police were called many times for disturbances. Not only that, often he would wander into the office and harass our clerks. Everyone was just annoyed with him. Everybody had just enough of him. The special meeting was called to discuss whether we would foreclose. The attorney told us that the latest deal was that he would pay $3,000 down and pay the remaining balance in payments. The attorney never received the $3,000. This meeting was convened at the insistence of Maureen, a board member. She confirmed that, as a neighbor, she too was annoyed at his behavior, but she warned us emphatically that his behavior was just plain strange. He was just not well, and she pleaded with us not to initiate the foreclosure proceedings. However, we did take a vote to initiate the foreclosure. And this is a painting of an insane asylum long before the time of Freud, when people didn't understand it. And social alienation was one of the main themes of Goya's masterpieces, such as The Madhouse, painted in 1819. And this social alienation is part of dementia today. We want to blame the demented for their unacceptable behavior. Now, listening to Maureen, I just had a very bad feeling about this, and also a feeling of discordance. The complaints about his harassing behavior were very real and credible, but Maureen's description sounded to my untrained ear to resemble dementia. But that didn't make any sense either, because who was the attorney negotiating with? Whoever was negotiating with the attorney had no cognitive impairments. Several months before, on our bulletin board, I noticed a card for a guardianship service. Now, guardians can take over the affairs of clients who are incapacitated, usually cognitively. Nobody knew who she was. That card had been on our bulletin board for years. I called Mercy, the guardian, simply to learn more about dementia, how we could spot it, what services were available, and just general information. We start talking, and she's telling me this and that, and after a while I said that we have a fellow that might have dementia, and I really didn't know that, but that the process was far too long to do anything about it, because the foreclosure was scheduled for Friday. And this is another 1795 painting. Dr. Pinnell ordered the removal of chains from the patients of the Paris Asylum for insane women. So even long ago, there was a movement to treat the insane as real human beings. Now, mind you, I was discussing this with her on Tuesday. Now, Mercy pipes up excitedly and says, "Of course we could do something about this. We have plenty of time. We can stop this foreclosure. It's not scheduled until Friday." When Mercy said this, I said to myself, "Oh, mercy me. This lady's not just a bureaucrat. She really cares about these poor people. But the vote was so certain that I knew it would be futile to get my fellow officers to change their mind because the foreclosure's Friday. So how can I buy time? Wednesday morning, before the foreclosure, on my own, on my personal email, personally, not as an officer, I offered the $3,000 to stave off the foreclosure. Once that happened and the foreclosure was halted, we could figure out what to do. Now, I had never met Robert, so Mercy would meet me at Robert's condominium to assess the situation. We both arrive at his door Wednesday afternoon and we knock on the door. Nothing. No answer. We knock again. Again, no answer. What to do now? Maybe Robert's wandering around. Where could Robert be? But finally, Robert opens the door, and sweet Mercy talks him into letting us in, and she's just trying to talk to him. After talking for just a few minutes, we realize he has no idea that he owes maintenance fees. He has no idea that he's facing foreclosure. He literally doesn't even know the name of the month. Advanced dementia, loony as a tune, and that was Mercy's diagnosis. Clearly, there was nobody for me to negotiate with, because Robert cannot enter into any legal agreements. He needs a guardian, and that takes a court hearing. Now, Mercy's a professional. She knew what she was doing. She starts looking around. The refrigerator is nearly empty, but there are some food containers laying around. The neighbors have been feeding him. So I go to Burger King and buy him his dinner. We looked in the association records. We look for numbers to call. We find no clue of any relatives we can contact. Here we have a picture of the healthy brain versus a severe advanced dementia brain, and dementia definitely does affect the brain. Now, who is the attorney negotiating with? On the floor, boxes with clothes and school supplies for his ex-girlfriend and her young daughter. He says they've broken up and she'll come back for her clothes. Now, she was a somewhat cognizant one, and I say somewhat because she was an alcoholic. Maybe she left because the money ran out. Frantically, I email and call the attorney and tell him he has to call out the foreclosure. This is horrible. The ex-girlfriend was negotiating with him in bad faith. Mercy learns that I offered $3,000 of my own money to the attorney, so she ups the ante. Thursday morning, she calls an emergency board meeting of her nonprofit organization, and she obtains approval to offer the attorney the full $7,000 to call off the foreclosure. She speculates that she would be able to be appointed guardian in this case, but she did not know for sure if there were any relatives out there that would gum up the court hearings. Her agency is a small organization, but she took the risk. And as you can see, the elderly Sean Connery suffered from dementia. The attorney declines the $7,000, calls off the foreclosure, confident that Mercy would be successfully appointed Robert's guardian by the court, and that she would, in due course, sell the property and remit the association what they were due at closing, which is what happened. Now, the story had a happy ending, a sad ending, and an okay ending. The happy ending is that Robert is now in a secure facility for Alzheimer's patients from which he cannot escape. Mercy, to her credit, took her time in finding a place to place him. Several facilities she rejected because the patients were walking around like zombies. They had been heavily sedated so they wouldn't cause problems. Now, the facility that she selected had some behavior problems with Robert, but he has settled down and thinks he's one of the managers of the facility, and they let him boss people around. His former neighbors have visited him. Maybe I'll go with them the next time. Robert probably wouldn't recognize who I am. He definitely has no idea what I went through to ensure that he is now in a good place. All he knows is that now he's in his new happy home. And the sad ending is that the girlfriend died from alcoholism several months ago. When Mercy told me that, I asked her, what about the daughter? She calls me back. The daughter's with her dad. Is her dad an okay dad? I do not know, so that's an okay ending. And yes, everybody's still upset with me. Now, some call me the conscience of the community, but most are still so upset with me they seek to shred my reputation. We did discover that Robert has a sister. She's estranged from him also, and relinquished all her rights to Mercy, the guardian. We do not know when this happened, but we can ask an unsettling question. Did his demented behavior repel her? The truth about dementia is this. Not only does it steal your recent memories, your cognition, your ability to perform daily tasks of living, dementia also steals your moral compass. You lose your inhibitions. If you were docile before, you will become more docile. If you were cantankerous before, you will become downright ornery. If you had thought inappropriate thoughts, you may be more likely to act out on these dark thoughts. Those suffering from dementia can't really control their actions. They're at the mercy of their emotions. And whatever they do is not their fault. The elderly Ronald Reagan also suffered from dementia. Now, we ran these observations past a spokesperson for the Alzheimer's Association, and he said that there are other reasons why sometimes those with dementia are aggressive, and he referred me to their website. In the words of the website, Aggressive behaviors can be verbal or physical. They can occur suddenly with no apparent reason or result from a frustrating situation. While aggression can be hard to cope with, understanding that the person with Alzheimer's or dementia is not acting this way on purpose can help. Now, why are Alzheimer's patients often aggressive? They are incapable of taking care of themselves. They could be suffering and don't know why. Perhaps they're not eating or drinking right. Maybe they have a urinary tract infection. Maybe they're in pain. Maybe they're sleep deprived. Maybe loud noises or commotion is upsetting them. And some patients get upset when the sun goes down. The Alzheimer's website discusses how caretakers can deal with this. Now, one fact is true. Their demented behavior is not their fault. And what are the odds of developing dementia? Over 65, 1 in 14. Over 80, 1 in 6. Average of 7% over 65. That means for every 100 people over 65, 7 will develop dementia. And that leads to an uncomfortable question. Out of the roughly 30 people active on our condominium board or officers, or the roughly 30 residents in our buildings, who among you will be the 2 who will go mad? If you have no friends, no family, would you hope that there would be strangers willing to look after your best interest? And keep in mind, if you have friends now, you may drive them away by your dementia. What are the lessons we can learn from our discussion of the case of Robert's foreclosure? First, we should be very reluctant to foreclose on someone whom we suspect may have dementia. I would like to point out that one of the first warning signs of dementia is an inability to manage your personal finances. Everybody knows. The police know this. The social agencies know this. And now you know this. Before we send someone to foreclosure, a few weeks prior, you can simply call the police and ask them to perform a wellness check. And we must tell them that they have not been paying their fees and we're considering foreclosure. Now, the very word foreclosure will set off warning bells. These warning bells will greatly increase the chance that the social welfare agencies will become involved in the case to resolve the situation, and indeed will provide them with the leverage they need to get involved and resolve it. And the elderly Rita Hayworth suffered from dementia, and the publicity around her diagnosis helped the Alzheimer's Association get started. Now, I live in Florida, a former Confederate state with no income tax, where the social safety net is threadbare. Like it or not, the police are tasked with doing welfare checks, and many of them take this role seriously. Unfortunately, demented behavior is often antisocial behavior, and sometimes they do not notice the underlying dementia. Now, I often say this as a joke, but I always mean it to be true, that if any elderly person is very irritable towards you, you can never exclude the possibility that they may be showing early forms of dementia. This is very true, and we've instructed the office staff to keep the property managers and others informed when a resident is exceptionally rude to them for this very reason. And dementia is a creeping disease. Now, what happens when the homeless or alcoholics marry the demented? We were lucky in Robert's case in one respect, and Robert was lucky because his girlfriend never talked him into marrying her. There was another situation that I was not involved with that the police told me about, where there was an elderly lady with dementia who was preyed upon by a homeless individual who persuaded her that he was in love with her. When the police caught wind of it and tried to get him thrown out, he immediately went down to the courthouse and married her. He was then untouchable, and he next had a grand time at the Hard Rock Cafe when he gambled away all of her money in one evening. The police could do nothing about it because he was her husband. How should we proactively intervene? You should intervene as soon as possible. The family members must keep in touch with their elderly parents and grandparents and be assertive in setting up a guardianship with them as guardians sooner rather than later. And we'll discuss the legal aspects of this in a later lecture. If you are not assertive, then you run the risk of a social parasite, a much younger alcoholic or homeless person or never do well, who will pander to them, and if they're married, you are often helpless to stop the pilfering of their assets. Now, for our community, we only collect emergency contact information when the owner purchases the unit. And decades later, when we need to review this information, often the files are lost, or all the phone numbers have been disconnected. Every decade or so, this emergency contact information must be updated so everyone knows who to call. And I might add, if you have emergency contact information, please put it on your refrigerator or put it on the back of your door so people can find it if you have a medical emergency. And the elderly Peter Falk of Colombo fame suffered from dementia. Be alert, and if someone over 70 or sometimes younger behaves in grotesquely inappropriate behaviors, if they are threatening or are indecent, you just cannot rule out dementia. You must remember, there are brain scans and other tests that doctors can run to confirm the existence of dementia in the elderly who appear to be misbehaving and are an irritation to the community. These diagnoses are not solely dependent on judgmental observations of behavior, although this is a secondary indication. If someone is behaving strangely, have them tested. Don't just assume that they are in full control of their actions. Are we our brother's keeper? Unfortunately, the answer received by Cain in Genesis still applies today. Yes, we are our brother's keeper. And we'll discuss the sources that we've used for this video in future videos. Now, most of my sources are the social workers and policemen with whom I consulted with in this personal experience, and also online discussions and information from the Alzheimer's Association website, which is www.alz.org. We next plan to review the in-life stories of celebrities who suffered from Alzheimer's, including Tony Bennett, Glenn Campbell, Rita Hayworth, and also general information about Alzheimer's, including warning signs, caretaking hints, and legal implications. Other celebrities who suffer from other types of dementia include Robin Williams and Ron Howard of Happy Days. And the books we have listed are Travelers to Unimaginable Lands, which is stories about dementia, and the famous book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, which includes clinical stories about patients suffering from neurological diseases, including some dementia stories. And we have the 2022 Dementia Overview on all the common types of dementia. The past 50 years has seen a shift from a paternalistic healthcare system where the doctors wielded enormous power over the mentally ill to the current HIPAA-obsessed system where the patient is sometimes over-empowered. And this empowerment often harms those suffering from dementia, since it leads to unfortunate situations where people can take advantage of those patients with dementia, especially when somebody much younger convinces them to marry them so they can drain their assets. If you look up there, we have many books on the anti-psychiatrist movement, Michael Foucault, R.D. Laing, and Thomas Szasz. Now, I was disappointed when I learned from Dr. Wikipedia that Szasz had cooperated with the Scientology movement, although he personally did not join the Scientologists. And The Right to Be Different may have been an influential legal and psychological book in this movement, and reviewing the table of contents, it's still applicable today. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the Meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.